Well, welcome back, amazing parents, back to our course entitled Fearless First Parents. So I'm super excited that you've joined me for this series. And we are about ready to get into the heart of it, the good stuff. So we've been talking about how we've been parenting and why that teaching right and wrong is a destructive, not only ineffective, but a destructive form of parenting. And that we've been doing that for many, many centuries and not knowing that we were actually, fighting against ourselves and creating the results that we were trying to avoid. So let's move on in this video. I'm going to start teaching you then what is your role as a parent? What is the goal of parenting? That's what we've been talking about. And I was trying to get my notes ready here. And so in this video, this is about the window of opportunity that you have in those first 3 years of life. So the 0 to 3 window of opportunity, because this is a critical time of your child's life that whatever happens in these 3 years is going to lay a foundation for your child's entire life. And I know that sounds incredible, but it's scientifically very easily proven, and we're going to talk about that in this video. So here's the reality, is that God has given this window of opportunity so that we can lay the foundation for our child's life. That is our goal as parents, to create that kingdom foundation, that godly foundation in our child's life in those first 3 years, and then just help them grow into it. And it's so darn easy. You know, God has actually rigged it this way on purpose. He's rigged it in our favor, so much so that once you understand this, it's so easy, and it actually takes a lot of work to mess it up. And the reality is most Christian parents have been working really hard at getting poor results. And as a church, we've been creating, we've been losing the overall statistics. We've been losing our children. So this is, like I said, this all came through the revelation of the 2 trees in the garden. And it is just incredibly, incredibly awesome and life-changing. So in this lesson, we're gonna start out talking a little bit about how your child processes information, even your infant, because your infant receives information all day long, every day. And when you understand how they receive information and what happens to that information once it's taken into his being, then you'll see very easily in the next few minutes how you literally have the ability to script his entire life in those first 3 years. So let's talk a little bit about the brain development of a human being, the cognitive development, how they are able to think and reason and that sort of thing. So when a baby is born, the only brain waves he has are delta brain waves. And these are the primary brain waves that a child has from 0 to 3. Now, delta brain waves are the lowest, slowest form of brain waves. So the brain develops kind of from the bottom up, okay? So from the lowest, slowest, and then brain activity speeds up. And the very last thing to develop is this frontal lobe, and that's where all of our problem solving, decision making, and logic and reasoning is. So that's the last thing to develop. And that doesn't develop till about age 13. So we have to learn this. We have to understand that you can't talk to a 2-year-old or a 1-year-old or a 3-year-old or a 5-year-old or an 8-year-old the same way you talk to an adult. So in fact, it wasn't, if you've heard of the Jewish tradition of bar mitzvah that happens around age 13, that was what it was celebrating, that they were passing from childhood into adulthood because they now had the ability to think and reason and make thought out choices. And before that, the parents were responsible. All the way up until that time, age 13, 12 for girls, the parents were responsible for them. And that term, bar mitzvah, literally means son of the commandments. And they did not hold their children accountable to the commandments until their bar mitzvah. So you can see that we've been expecting, as Western Americans, way more of our children than they're capable of. So anyway, so let's look at this brain development. So when they're born, they're in that the lowest, the bottom part of the brain is what's online, and it's the delta brainwaves. So these delta brainwaves are the same brainwaves that you and I have when we're in a deep sleep. And so your child is always their brain is always in a deep sleep. So think about it. Most adults have no conscious memories before age 3. And this is why. Because we weren't awake yet. We were in this subconscious, unconscious state. It's like they're walking around. One scientist put it this way. It's like they're asleep with their eyes open, which is exactly what it is. So if you think about when you're asleep, are you thinking or deciding or evaluating or judging anything? No, everything just comes in, and it just comes in. In fact, a lot of college students use this to listen to lectures from their classes while they're sleeping, so that it just all goes in to their subconscious, and it's just in there. And they can recall it then during tests. It's a form of study. And people have actually used this to learn foreign languages and all sorts of other things when this concept was kind of discovered and made popular about 30 years ago. And the other thing that was made popular about 30 years ago was that you could teach your little child a second language very easily. And that's why. Because they're not processing through a conscious, trying to figure it out and remember. It's just automatically going in. So I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself here. So let's look at this. Right. So it's like they're asleep. Right. We talked about that. So they're in this state of complete receptivity. They don't have the ability to judge, evaluate, or decide what they're going to receive into their mind, into their being. It just all goes in as fact, and it's filed away for later use. So what's happening is the child comes into the world knowing nothing about life, people, God, himself, how anything works. And so all of the experiences in those first 3 years of life are being filed away in that blank slate, just filed away. It's like, what do they call it? Memory bytes in computers, data bytes. And they're all just being filed away, and and then they're being sorted into groups, and so they come to like these conclusions, not consciously but subconsciously. And so what's happening is all of this experience, all the sensory experience, all the interactions your baby and your toddler have with you and other human beings is creating what they believe about life, and it's called your worldview. So the first time I heard this, it blew my mind. I heard this statistic that psychologists believe that our entire worldview is shaped by age 3. And when I first heard that, I thought, that's really weird. Could that be true? And then as I began understanding brain development, I thought, well, that makes total sense, because all of those first 3 years are coming in and creating that foundation that determine our beliefs, our attitudes, our expectations, what we believe about ourselves, what we believe about others, what we believe about how people should respond to us, and even what we believe about God. So it's really important when your baby is even newborn that you make sure that you're responding to him in a way that creates a healthy worldview. And we're talking about relationships primarily, because how you see other people, relationships are the foundation of life. And so the way that you relate to your baby is going to create those foundational, deep-seated beliefs that will drive all of the relationships he has in life. In fact, one psychologist put it this way, is that, I just lost my train of thought, that your child will see God in the way that you relate to him. In other words, we're the earthly model of God to our children. That's probably why he calls himself our father, because he's our ultimate parent, but we're kind of his hands and feet here on earth. So however we relate to them is the way God relates to them. So when your baby cries, that's his only form of communication, respond to him. So there's some very detrimental parenting training out there, especially in the Christian world, that goes along with this idea that our children are driven by sin, their sin nature, and that crying is evidence of that. They just want attention. Well, here's the reality. And we can talk about sin nature. We'll talk about that in another video. I don't think I'll have time in this one. Oh my goodness, I just looked at the time. I'm way over already. And I'm not even halfway through my notes. So sorry, I'm trying to keep these videos short. So a baby cries because he's telling you he needs something. And I just want to say this, is that studies show, they studied infants in Russia that grew up as orphans, and they had hundreds of them because of things going on in Russia back whenever in the 80s, wars and things, and just, yeah, so there's all these orphans. And sorry, I'm not really good on world history or even current events, but this study studied orphans in an orphanage, and there were not near enough workers to give any kind of attention to the babies. All they did was give them their feeding, whenever it was time to feed them. They didn't get any human touch, was the point. And there was a high mortality rate among these babies. So they were dying off pretty quickly. And what they discovered was that, and maybe you've heard this, hopefully you have, it's kind of commonly known now, somewhat, that human touch, just skin-to-skin touch with other humans, is just as important for survival as food. So if your baby cries and you pick him up, and that's all he needed to stop crying, then that's what he needed. He just needed that human touch. And what that does is it creates a foundation of security and safety in his life. If he cries and you let him cry, which, as I said, there's very detrimental teachings out there about this that are completely unscriptural, and they defy human development. And God never defies human development. He created us the way he did for a reason. Is that if you pick him up and then that's what he needed. You cannot spoil an infant. And what you want to teach him is that the world is a safe place and that he's not alone. Because if you leave him to cry, he learns at an early age that he's alone. He has to depend on himself, and there's no one else to help him. And what that does in the body is it creates a chemical state of high alert. I didn't even plan on talking about this in this video, but I guess this is what we're going to talk about in this one. And I'll finish the other information in the next one. It creates this condition in the body. It's a chemical reaction in the brain that it creates this, it emits this, I think it's oxytocin. I don't want to say it because I may say the wrong thing. It's cortisol. I think it's cortisol. It's cortisol, sorry. And so what it does is it raises the body into this state of, you're on alert. Like you're always on the lookout. So you're never in a restful, receptive state. You're always on the lookout because you got to defend yourself. So the body goes into this hyper alert, and it creates very toxic situation in the body that's physically destructive, emotionally, mentally. It's a very destructive state, all because the child feels like he's alone. Now, a lot of adults feel that way because they were raised with that mentality. Their parents had the mentality that, oh, if a baby cries, they just need to cry it out, or we don't want to spoil them. All that stuff is lies. And think about who would want to destroy our children. is the father of lies. So he's sown these lies into the church, into society, or especially in the church, that this is a child's sin nature. No, it's not. It's the foundation of his life, and you are his protector and provider, and you give him that security that he knows he's not alone. And that's what he needs to know about his heavenly Father, that he'll never leave him. And we struggle with that as adults because maybe many of us didn't get that as much attention and holding as we needed as babies. And so I'll give you an example from my own life. My first daughter was born, and I did everything with her. She was glued to my side for 4 years. Now, I did work in there, but when I was home, we were together. She was number one, right? And so I became pregnant with my second child when she was about three years old. She was a little over 4, 3.5. So by the time I thought, oh my gosh, how am I going to handle 2 that need me like this? Well, the reality is, for those first four years that she had with me, she had 100% of my attention. And when the new baby came, it was like somebody flipped a switch and she thought, I've never asked her, and she may not even remember him, but it seemed like to me that she realized, oh, mom has another baby. Okay, I'm good. So it's that concept that you either pay now or pay later. I think I already mentioned that in a previous video. If you give your child the attention they need when they're little, instead of pushing them away, they're going to have so much confidence in the fact that you'll be there when they need them that they'll be so independent. You'll be surprised. So we think the opposite, that we need to force them to be independent, and we need to teach them by pushing them away and forcing them to do things apart from us, that will create independence. And the opposite is true. If you keep pushing them away and withholding what they need, which is your presence, that you're always there for them, that you'll always be there, that you'll never push them away, that's what they need in order to develop the confidence in themselves that they can do it. Because in the back of their mind, in their subconscious, they know that there's a safety net, that you're there if they need you. And so I'm going to end this video with that, because it really disturbs me when I hear these other unfounded Christian training about letting your baby cry, forcing him to follow your schedule and those kind of things. No, you need to follow his schedule. And I'll tell you, you can get your baby on a schedule very easily in a way that's not traumatic for him, because leaving a baby to cry for long periods of time is traumatic, and it creates that feeling that I'm alone in the world is not a safe place, and there's nobody here to help me. So please, when your baby cries, know that he needs something. Babies don't cry for no reason. I'll give you another quick story. I had friends who had a baby, and their expectation was that they were going to be sleep deprived. I had 8 children. I was never sleep deprived. In fact, if I didn't get my sleep, I was worthless to my children. And so, they had this mindset that, oh, that's just the way it is. When you have a child, you're sleep deprived. Well, you're going to get what you expect. I mean, that's scriptural actually too. But so this baby would cry a lot and keep him up at night. And I was in a group with them, a church group, so I had regular contact with them and was kind of we were all walking this journey with them. And I just knew there was something that wasn't right. It wasn't, she was being held, she was being fed, she had what she needed, but this baby was crying and crying. Well, it turned out, they found out several months later that she had a huge brain tumor that was, pressing on her eye and her brain. And here she's crying. She's trying to tell them something's not right. She may have been in pain, I don't know. But your baby cries for a reason. They don't just cry to cry. They don't cry because they want attention. And the other thing I'll finish with is that for a child up until probably about 8 years old, they don't know the difference between a want and a need. So if they want something, It's a need to them. So trying to talk to them and reason it out, saying you don't need that, is a waste of time. But for an infant or for a baby or for, crying says there's something that isn't right. Whether they have, upset stomach, which is common, colic and all that is fairly common. Thankfully, I never had to deal with that. Or something they need a diaper. Some babies can't stand for their diaper to be dirty, and, or they just need to be held. I think 90% of babies, calling out, crying out, is they just need that human touch, because that's, like I said, it is as important for their survival, not just their survival, but healthy mental, emotional, and physical development depend on human touch as much as it depends on nutrition. So I hope that's helpful to you. To me, that's one of the most important things for new moms to know, new dads, is that you cannot spoil your infant by holding him too much. In fact, you're actually creating a solid foundation for a kid that has so much confidence that they'll be so independent, you won't even believe it. That's the way my oldest daughter was. She got more of me than any of my other kids, obviously, because she was the first and the only one for 4 years. And she is the most confident, successful person you ever want to meet. Just does way more than I could ever do, and it's just accomplished so much. And all my kids are very successful, but I just could see that in her life, that she got that attention and that comfort and assurance that she wasn't alone in those early years, and it gives them so much confidence. It's really the foundation for a successful life. So I'm going to leave you with that, and this video is way too long, but that's where we went today. I just try to let the Spirit lead me, and we'll finish our talk about your child's cognitive development in the next video. I'll see you there. Take care and God bless.